You've probably watched lots of tutorials showing you how to make straps and bandages in ZBrush using the slicing curve. This is a technique that is pretty useful and you can create retopology from the polygroups. However, I want to show you something slightly different and more accurate in this video so that you can create straps and bandages that feel connected. It is a small change in the workflow, but it completely changes the realism of the wraps, and I'm sure it will give you more ideas for other things in ZBrush. Hey, if you're new around here, my name is Pablo. I'm a 3D concept artist and educator, and I help artists level up their skills in the world of 3D, all in a way that is fun, clear, and actually doable. In this video, I want to show you how to create straps for your character, usually things that you'll see in something like this, just wrapped around the arm, but in a slightly different way. So I want to show you how to make them feel connected, and it's a very straightforward process, but the change in how you approach the creation of these straps is going to change how you probably create other stuff in ZBrush. So I think it's just, even though it's very, very specific, creating this type of stuff, you can use this in a bunch of different ways. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. All right, so here we are in ZBrush, and this is roughly what we're gonna be creating. It's a simple technique, but as you can see, the straps in this arm, it kind of like feels connected, like it's the same single piece just wrapped around the arm, rather than just a bunch of loops. So that's gonna be one of the main things of this technique that is different from probably what you've seen in other video tutorials. And before we get started, I just wanna mention I'm using ZBrush 2026, but you can follow along if you have a previous version of ZBrush. The techniques and the features that I'm going to show you can be totally done in previous version of ZBrush. It's nothing specific to this version. I'm also using a custom UI, but I'm going to show you exactly where to find the things that I'm going to use. So yeah, that's kind of like the reference. I have already separated the arm so that we start with a clean slate. And this arm has subdivision levels. So I have 5 subdivision levels, currently 2.5 million polygons, and I have a low-res mesh. Now, before we jump into the proper technique, I'm going to give you an alternative method that is probably what you've seen before. So I'm going to go ahead and let's actually clone this. So we just start with another one. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and delete lower. So we have just a single subdivision level. And if I go ahead and turn on the polyframe, we have only a single polygroup. Now, this is probably what you've seen a lot of people do. And again, it's something that works. And it's totally valid as a concept. It works totally fine. I just want to give you a slightly different one so that you're aware of how to achieve it. And like I said, giving you a bunch of ideas. So I'm going to click on the slice curve. I'm going to click on skip node until next restart. And then I'm just going to hold Control and Shift and click and drag to slice. That's it. So that basically creates a very clean polygroup between, let's say, the forearm and the hand itself. So then you can go ahead and do the same thing, just this sort of irregular stripes. And then you can rotate just to get something a little bit more interesting going, like so, and that's it, right? So you end up with a bunch of polygroups. Again, this is a single mesh, but you have all these polygroups that then you can extract and create the bandages. So the technique roughly goes like this. So you have this polygroup. We can potentially just duplicate this whole thing, and we can go with the select rectangular piece, and I'm going to hide what I don't need. So Control Shift, click and drag. Let's hide the hand, and we can just leave these ones as it is. Let's go ahead and also go to the tool palette, then geometry palette, then modify topology, and we're going to click on delete hidden. This is something that I use quite often, so I have it here in my custom palette. Delete hidden is the same thing that I have here. So we now have this single-sided mesh that has a bunch of polygroups. So what we can do now, let's bring in the line again, and we can go to the ZRemesher. So let's go to ZRemesher here, and we're going to select keep groups so we can tell ZBrush we want to keep all of these groups. And we're going to reduce the target count to maybe 1,000, so 1.1 roughly. And let's remesh that. And there we go. Now we have a bunch of polygroups, but we have a nicer set of polygroups. This could be improved a little bit. Let's go ahead and do it again. There we go. So now we have something a bit nicer. Now we can go to Edge Loop here, and we can click on Panel Loops. So clicking on Panel Loops will give you this sort of like thickness. Let's go ahead and smooth this out so you can see, right? So once you have these panel loops, you can go ahead and smooth things out just a little bit. There we go. Let's turn this off and switch to a different material. Let's get out of solo mode. And I'm just going to actually inflate things just a bit. There we go. And we can go ahead and start playing with the move brush, just adjusting this. And because we have different polygroups, we can actually use the move topological, maybe with the AccuCurve, and we can start bringing some of these straps up or down like so. And it sort of creates that effect that some of the straps goes over the other one, etc. Right? So this requires a little bit of work, but it's a simple technique. It works. It kind of like gives you the effect, but this is not what I want to show you. I just want to give you this because this is something that I personally use as well, and you probably find it, in a bunch of different tutorials because it is a technique that is useful. It works, But the one I want to show you is slightly different. So I want to cover this in case you're not familiar with this one. It is totally valid. It totally works. You just need to spend a little bit more time, probably maybe using a less thickness. So actually, let me just go back in time. I want to give you one extra technique here before we jump into the proper one. So before you create the panel loops here, you could actually separate and split all of these ones, and that will give you a really nice result as well. So this is an extra tip or an extra technique. We can go with the ZModeler. So this is just the ZModeler technique. I want to right click on an edge. We can go to bevel, and we're going to split every single bit of this, this part here. So I'm going to click again. So every single poly loop or every single color is going to be split by a quick poly group like that. All right. So now we can hold Control and Shift to isolate all of these pieces. Let's go ahead and do that. Invert that. So you see, basically that's what I created with the ZModeler, just a loop in between all of this. And let's click on Delete Hidden. So now we literally split this geometry so they're not connected. And now we can use Dynamic. So that's probably a simpler, easier way to go about it. So Dynamic Subdivision, click on Dynamic. And I'm going to also push the thickness. Maybe we can turn off the post subdivide so we have something smoother and nicer. And the cool thing with this is that we only deal with a single-sided mesh. So let's push this a bit more. Let's get out of solo. And the advantage of doing it this way is that because this is ultimately a single-sided mesh, right? This is just using the dynamic subdivision to add thickness dynamically. We can actually project. So I'm going to go to the subtool palette here, go to the project tab, and I'm going to turn off color and click on geometry. So project all. So that basically projects that single-sided mesh to conform to the outline of this arm. And it is a lot easier, if we go back to the move topological, it's a lot easier to manipulate a single-sided mesh. Remember, this is just dynamic. So we can just manipulate this and create a much more convincing effect, or at least something that works better and faster. And we can obviously smooth things out. I'm doing this very, very rough. You would probably want to spend a bit more time and making sure that the things feel actually more connected. But I just wanted to give you, different alternatives in ZBrush. There are multiple ways of doing the same thing. So now let's go ahead and start with the proper tutorial. I'm going to select the arm. Let's actually delete this. That's not what I'm going to be using. But the technique that I show you, it kind of like gives you an idea of what we can do in a slightly better way. So now we have the arm. I'm going to switch to a custom masking brush, which is this sharp mask. And the only difference between this and let's say the mask pen, I'll show you. So the mask pen gives you a slightly blurred effect. This custom mask, it has a very, very sharp effect. Okay, so you could totally use the mask pen. If you want to get something sharper, what you can do is select the mask pen. Then I'm going to right click anywhere just to bring in this or press a spacebar to bring this up. And then if you hold Control, you access the intensity and the focal shift and all of that of this masking brush. So if you hold the Control key, you can take the focal shift and you can push it to -100. And that already should give you something sharper. That's it. So that's roughly what I've done with this one. Just a simple brush. So that's the first thing, or the step one, is just to make sure that the masking brush that you use, it has a sharp edge. The step two would be to decide how thick you want your straps to be. And that thickness is going to be determined by the size of your brush. So I'm going to increase my brush size. Something like that I think will be fine. Maybe slightly more or slightly less. Yeah, something like this. And then we're going to create a kind of like a spiral mask that goes from the wrist up. And then we're going to go back. So I'm going to hold Control. Maybe, actually, I'm going to reduce this slightly more. So I'm going to start here, holding Control, and then I'm just going to go up. Now, the key here is to press really hard so that you maintain the thickness all around. And another thing to keep in mind is that you're going to create a little bit of a gap in between these masking points. And that's the idea, so that you can cover it. So don't create a huge gap in between them. And you can variate it as well. All right, so I think something like this would be okay. So you see, it doesn't connect, it doesn't do anything. It just goes from the bottom to the top of the forearm in a spiral fashion. That's it. So now that we have this, we're going to go to the extract palette here, one of my favorite techniques. And like I said, this can be used in a bunch of different scenarios, not just to create the straps, but it works really well in this case. So in this extract subpalette, if I click on extract, you'll see I just generated a geometry around this mesh. But we're going to keep things even simpler than this. So I don't want to have any thickness. So let's go to the thick and let's reduce that to 0. So we don't have any thickness. Let's click on extract. And now we have something that is single-sided and it matches what we masked out. Let's click on accept. And that, clicking on accept, will actually create a new mesh. Let's click on double. By the way, this double that I've used before, sorry, that is on the display properties, and it's just a matter of like visualizing the inside of the normals, or like the backside of the single-sided meshes. All right, let's go back in here. So we now have this mesh. Let's leave that one for the time being, and let's go back to the arm. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna create the opposite direction. So what I wanna do now is hold Control, click and drag to remove this mask. I'm going to get out of solo so that I can see roughly what this is doing. And if you wanna visualize things a bit better, what you can do as well is select the extracted. By the way, when you extract a piece like this, it's automatically gonna have a mask. So I'm gonna hold Control and click and drag to remove that. And I'm just going to use, just for the time being, a dynamic width thickness, just so that I can see it. We'll come back to that in a bit. Go back to the arm itself. And now I'm gonna do the opposite. So I'm gonna hold Control and I'm just gonna go this way. And the reason I like to see the thickness of the other subtool that we created is so that I can essentially cover the areas that the other strap, is not covering. So it's a little bit more realistic. All right. And you notice I'm just gonna leave it around here, maybe a little bit more. Same thing here. So it's not necessarily connecting. If you go over, it doesn't really matter because it's gonna be a separate subtool, but roughly this is what I want. So the opposite of what we did before, again, from the top to the bottom or bottom to top, it doesn't really matter, but it just goes in the opposite direction, okay? So that's it. Now let's turn the extract off and let's do the same thing. Just to repeat the process, I'm gonna click on extract, add 0, and I'm gonna click on accept, clear the mask on both subtools. There we go. Now I'm gonna go ahead and turn off dynamic. We don't need that anymore. And ultimately, if I turn off the arm, now we have a couple of straps. Oh, and this is the one that we sliced as well. So I'm just going to click on auto group. By the way, the auto group for you guys, that would be under the PolyGroop. You can use auto group or you can use group visible, same thing. I'm gonna do the same thing here, group visible, make sure I have double enable. All right, so we have something a bit wobbly, doesn't really look as nice as we had before, but this is going to be the basis of the technique. So the next thing I wanna do is create a retopology for both of these pieces. I'm gonna start with this one, and I'm going to also polish some of these edges. So you see they're like a bit jagged. So what I can do is go to the deformation palette, and all of these things that I'm mentioning, I usually do it a little bit faster because I have it in my custom UI here, but I wanna cover all the bits and pieces. So let's go ahead and click on polish by groups, or just polish in general to click to create a bit of a cleaner version of this mesh. And we're gonna fix the edges in just a bit. Let's go to the ZRemesher here. And I'm gonna leave this at maybe 1 or thereabouts. And that's it, I don't need to do anything else. I'm gonna click on ZRemesher, and there we go. So this looks pretty good, but we can improve this a bit, and this could have like a better edge flow, and we will be able to fix some of these edges. So now that we have a simpler topology, I'm gonna go ahead and click on polish by crisp edge. That fixes thing a little bit, and then let's go back to the ZRemesher here. Now before I ZRemesh this, what I want to do as well is I want to clean up some of these edges so that it doesn't look like a rounded piece. You can go with the move brush or the move topological and do something like this if you want, or you can use the select lasso and then just hide the end bits like so, and click on delete hidden, like I showed you where it is before in the modify topology. Yeah, you can delete hidden. All right, back to ZRemesher. This time, now that I've seen what I have, I want to be able to have this amount of polygons. So I just click on half, click on ZRemesher, and now you have something a lot cleaner. We can try this one more time. There we go. So we have something very, very simple and very clean. That's exactly what I'm looking for. All right, let's go ahead and do the same thing for the other piece. So I'm just going to speed this up really quickly because it's going to be exactly the same thing. I'm going to target 900 polygons. All right, so that's not too bad. Let's go ahead and polish by crisp edge like I did before. Let's have this ZRemesher, ZRemesher again, and now we have what we need. I'm gonna delete this as well. Forgot to do that. And we can adjust this a little bit. Perfect. All right. So you see, once you know the technique, is actually pretty easy. Let's actually bring in the arm now. And because we have this as a single-sided, what I'll do as well is I'm going to project so that we make sure that it is following the surface. So project all. Let's do the same thing with the other one. Project all. I don't want to project polypane. Just hit no. Cool. All right, so we now have, let's go back. We have 2 straps. All I need to do now is combine them and connect them. I'm gonna click on merge down, click OK. So now we have a single-sided mesh, right, that wraps around, but is not connected. So that's gonna be the next portion of this tutorial, is just connecting these things, but it's really easy. I'm just gonna bring these points a little bit closer. We're going to worry about the intersection in just a bit. So to connect these ones is actually really easy. We can use the ZModeler. So I'm going to go to the brush palette. I'm going to click on ZModeler. I'm going to right click on the edge and I'm going to choose the action that I want, which in this case is to bridge. So I'm going to click on bridge. And then in the target, I'm going to leave it as edges because these are not two holes. So bridge and edges. That's it. Let's reduce the brush size a little bit. And all I need to do now is click on one edge, then click on the next one. We'll do it 3 times in this case. You probably do it more times if you have more topology, but that's why a simple topology of maybe 3 edge loops or 3 loops, poly loops works just fine. Oops, be careful to select the right one. All right. And one more thing, just because this is a little bit too stretch, I'm going to right click the edge and I'm going to click on insert. And that's allowing me to add an extra loop in there. Perfect. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure that I maintain only 2 polygroups, and you'll see why in a second. So I want to hold Control and Shift with the select rectangular or any selection brush. I'm going to isolate this and I'm going to auto group that. All right. So now we have a single polygroup and I also have the purple one, but we now have a continuous mesh. So that's exactly what we needed. And it's a bit more realistic. Obviously, this is in real life, you probably have like a knot or something in there because otherwise it will be pretty hard to put that on. But yeah, hopefully you get the idea or the point of what I'm trying to show you. So I'm going to repeat a bit of the previous technique. I'm going to enable dynamic. I'm going to click on thickness to add some thickness as well. And I want to turn off this post subdivide. And that is going to give me a smoother version around the edges. Now you can do a couple of things. You can use the segments to add segments towards the edges. I prefer not to do that and rather create an edge loop around the edges so that it sharpens them up. So let's go into solo mode. I'm going to go back to the ZModeler. I'm going to right click on an edge. I want to click on insert, make sure that I have that already. Click and drag. And I'm just going to push that, not all the way, just before I get to the edge. And the same thing towards the bottom. So now if I turn off dynamic, you see that we have the 3 poly loops like so, but then we have this additional one that is sharper or smaller, and that is what creates that sharpness of the edge. All right, so another thing is you'll notice the thickness is quite evident in this case, but if I go out of the solo mode, it is very, very thin. So it's kind of like pushed in. That is because of the offset in the dynamic subdivision, which is this one right here. So what I want to do is take this and push it all the way to 100 so that it is pushed from the surface. So you see if I turn this on and off, like the solo mode, the thickness appears from the actual surface of the model. All right, that's great. Now we can just switch to a move topological brush so that we respect the continuity and the polygroups, and we can actually mask some things out. So I want to hold Control and Shift to isolate the purple one. And this is the reason why we have the different polygroups in this case. And I'm going to hold Control and click once in the canvas. So that is going to mask everything out. Hold Control and Shift to bring back everything. And we can just go ahead and start pushing these like so. So let's say if this one goes on top of the purple one, then in this case, this one goes inside. So I'm just going to push that in. Actually, let's use the move brush because it's going to be easier. We have a mask, so that's fine. And then this one goes up. And then this one goes down. And that's it. Now I'm going to hold Control and click outside on the canvas to invert that mask. And then I'm going to do the opposite. So if the purple one goes down here, it goes up in this case. Then go down in here. And then goes up. All right, let's clear the mask. And I'm going to go ahead and do a quick polish by groups just to clean this up a little bit and adjust any area that might be intersecting with the arm or with itself. All right, how cool is that? So now we have a strap that works a lot better. In this case, I could have done more, as in more sections, but I want to show you an additional thing that you can do if you want to increase the thickness of this once you finish. Because remember, we still have this as a dynamic. So what you can do instead of just leaving it as it is to turn off the subdivision. So I'm going to go to the smooth subdivision, set it to 0, so that you can visualize how it would look like if you were to subdivide it. And then you have 2 options. The first option is to apply the dynamic subdivision, and then you end up with actual thickness. So you can use the ZModeler. You can hold the right click on a polygroup like so, and click on extrude. And I'm going to select this polygroup all. So basically this tells ZBrush that I want to extrude something, or in this case, a polygon. And this tells ZBrush what is the target. So in my case, polygroup all means everything that has the same color or the same polygroup. So I'm going to click and drag, and you see, I'm just extruding that. Now I can just go ahead and do this, let's say, to make it thicker. And then the cool thing about the ZModeler is that it will remember the settings. So all I need to do is click once on the other polygroup, and you'll see it sort of works, except this needs to be connected. So you can just go ahead and connect it afterwards. But this is one way of doing it. So let's go ahead and undo that, because there's another way. So I'm gonna go back before I apply the dynamic. Let's turn that off. And so we have the single-sided mesh. I'm gonna right click on an edge, and I'm gonna click on extrude, but this time I'm gonna extrude the edge. So, and by the way, we have the edge/edge loop, and that allows us to select between the whole edge loop and an edge. So I'm gonna click and drag, and now we have a single edge. But without letting go of the click, if I press the Alt key, that brings in the rest of the edge loop. So that is the advantage of doing it that way. So again, Alt to just a single edge, or Alt again to have the entire edge loop. So I'm gonna do it like so, and then from here, and that's it. So we have now a thicker mesh. And of course, this edge loop that we use to kind of like sharpen the edges, we can move it as well. So I'm gonna right click this edge. I'm gonna go to the slide. I wanna make sure that the entire edge loop is being slide. Click and drag, and then move this up, and oops, move this down as well. Perfect. And that's it. We can go ahead and click on dynamic, turn this off. And now all we need to do again is adjust the strap. So I'm gonna select some portion. So this is the reason why I wanted to show you this technique, because it produces a more realistic effect, I think. It's a bit more convincing. And not only that, it just gives you that opportunity to play around with the thickness and, you know, with these techniques that I just show you. I think it's totally valid. Let's see. All right, so now we have the basis for our strap. And I think this constitutes like maybe 90% is just to have this like so. Once you have this, you can go ahead and play it with the dynamic thickness. Let's say if you want something a bit thicker that is not just a clean, simple fabric like a linen or something, maybe you want like a leather strap or something, you can play with the thickness. So we can go with something like that, and we can click on apply. So now we have subdivisions, right? So you have your low-res mesh that is a nice, clean topology that wraps all around the arm. You then have your high subdivision level. We can go ahead and subdivide a couple more times, maybe to subdivision level 6. So just this subtool has 2 million polygons. That is not too bad. All right, so the next thing is just to add some folds and wrinkles. I'm gonna do this very quickly because I have a custom brush. So I'm gonna bring in a light box. And this pack of brushes is available in the Pablender Academy resource website. So you can go ahead and purchase this. But if you don't have this or don't wanna get these brushes, you can totally do the same thing with the standard brush. It's just a way to speed things up. So I'm gonna click on these compression folds, for example. It's a good one. I'm also gonna go to the lowest subdivision level, go into solo, and I'm gonna isolate this polygroup here and the one outside. All right, so let's mask this out, bring back the rest, and go to the highest subdivision level. So this is the advantage of this technique as well, that you end up with a bunch of polygroups. So now we're only affecting the top one, right? And this brush, this is what it allows it to do, just creating these sort of like compression folds. Actually, I'm gonna use a different one. I think it's gonna be better. These compression folds, let's undo that. Yeah, this one is gonna be better. And I'm gonna reduce the intensity slightly. And obviously, this depends on the type of material that you're trying to create. I always kind of like say that the sculpt needs to look like the material that you are sculpting before any additional details or any texture. So if you want something more like a leather strap, then you're gonna have less of these compression folds, and then you'll have more of the memory folds, for example, like just thick, sharp, maybe even broken folds. But in this case, I just want to have some kind of like fabric that I don't know, kind of like a canvas maybe, or even like a linen. So this helps me create that effect rather quickly. All right, and then if you want to be more precise, you can bring in your standard brush, and then you can add some additional volume in certain areas. And I would always say any custom brush, even if it is something that that I have on my website, it's more like a way to speed up the workflow and establish some things, but nothing is going to beat the manual process of adding details. So I would always go back and refine where I place those details, just to make sure that there is an actual compression fold, or there's actually a variation in the outline in this case, because that's ultimately what the compression is. It's going to push some of the volume outwards. All right, so let's clear that mask now. I'm gonna polish everything a little bit, get out of solo mode, and we now have this bandage. So you see, it's slightly different from the other one that I showed you at the beginning. In this case, I just did like closer, the mask was closer to the previous one, but I do have kind of like all the steps so that I can show you. If I go back, this is kind of like what I had before. This one is the result of the 2 polygroups. I just did, like I said, more loops. This is before I applied the subdivision level. This is the single one, the first one, and this is the second one. So these are the, let's say, the going left to right, and this one is right to left. And that's it. This is what I extracted, exactly the same. And this is what I extracted. And I think, yeah, and I still have the mask. So you see, it's exactly the same thing. I just kind of like spent a bit more time wrapping it exactly what I wanted. But the process is exactly the same thing. I just kept all of them to show you the difference. And just to wrap it up, because I know some of you guys might want to know how I approach the detailing process and, you know, all of this, is actually very, very simple. The fact that you have straps or like a continuous straps makes it really easy to use the noise maker. So what you can do is go to the lowest subdivision level of your strap, then go to the Z plugin palette, go to the UV master, and I'm going to click on polygroups and click on wrap. That's it. So now we have UVs. They might not be the best UVs. Let's go ahead and check that out. You know, but they're workable. If you want something a bit more, a bit cleaner, you probably want to take all of these UV islands and make them straight and pointing in the horizontal or vertical direction. But just for the time being, this works. And once you have that, we can go to the highest subdivision level. It doesn't really matter. We're going to use surface noise. And let's open up the surface palette, click on noise, and let's frame the tool here. You can start with something like this. This already looks interesting, but what I want to do is turn off the 3D and change it to UV so that it uses the UV. And I'm going to load a alpha. So I'm going to click on pick alpha, this thing right here. And then I'm going to browse my resources. I'm going to go to fabrics. And a lot of the things that you see here, you can find them as resources in the Pablender Academy as well. So you can just download, you know, most of them are tileable textures. So let's pick something like this. Maybe this denim pattern would be good, or something a bit more, maybe this knitting pattern. I want to try this knitting pattern 01. I'm going to click open. And you don't see the effect right away because we need to take the mix basic noise, which is the original noise from the noisemaker. I want to set this to 0. So we see 100% contribution of this alpha. Now let's go ahead and take the strength and push it down a bit. So this is pretty strong, but the alpha itself is huge. So we're going to take the alpha scale and reduce that. Something like that. There we go. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and click OK. And now we have these details. So all we need to do after this is either apply the noise. So that's just a matter of clicking on apply to mesh. And now this noise has been applied to the mesh. If it's a little bit blurry or a bit too pixelated, it's because you need more resolution in your subdivision. So another subdivision level probably, so that you can apply the surface noise. And then finally, you can use a bunch of brushes to change how this looks. So I'm going to use the Sitzlobensinski. This is another custom brush. But to be honest, I'm going to show you what it is, and I'll show you which one you can use instead if you don't want to get this pack. So I have a pack of brushes called the H.R. Geiger and Sitzlobensinski pack. So it's kind of like a tribute pack. And this brush is from this pack. It's this one, the standard strong. If you don't want to use this one, you can totally use the standard brush and just increase the intensity quite a bit. That's pretty much what this brush is. And then I'm going to use the Alt key, and I'm just going to use this brush to push things in. And that is going to create a little bit of that damage around the edge. So anything that's strong could be a good one, just to generate this variation, maybe some of the cuts in there. If you want something sharper, you can use the slash brush as well. Let's go for slash 3. You can use that as well. You can also change the alpha. So slash 3, change the alpha, maybe to something alpha 27. There's actually a brush that's probably better for this that comes with ZBrush. We can go to the slash brushes, yeah, and we can use this slash 2. So that one has an interesting alpha, kind of like similar to what I just chose. So this allows you to cut through this sort of fabric a little bit more and just give you more randomness. So I would use this in combination with the strong standard just to generate this variation so that it's not like a perfect strap. So it feels like it's been cut off from another larger fabric. And you can do this type of cuts as well. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because that's, you know, it requires patience. But in terms of the technique, there's not much to it. To be honest, this is just what I would do. Maybe cut things slightly. And that's it. So you spend a little bit more time and create those things. And finally, one more extra tip that I can give you is how to generate those kind of like fluffs or, you know, flyaways that I have in my custom one. So all of these things, these are done with fiber mesh. So just to achieve that, what we can do again, because we have polygroups, is to isolate those polygroups. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce the subdivision level to 4, hold Control and Shift to access my selection brushes, and I'm going to select, just these ones right here. I want to hold Control and click on the canvas to mask that out. So now I have just the top bits masked, and probably what we want to do is maybe reduce this even more and hold Control once so that we can, maybe that's a little bit too much, sorry. Let's go back to 4, Control and click once. So that basically dilutes or smooths out that, or blurs the mask really, so that is something simpler. But we have that mask all around the edges. So that's the advantage of this whole technique and keeping the polygroups. Let's go to Fiber Mesh now. And before I click on preview, make sure that this double is off. This is one of the crucial mistakes that people make when they work with Fiber Mesh, is that they leave the double-sided, so display properties double, they leave that on. And that way, ZBrush will create Fiber Mesh in both directions. So the positive of the normals and the negative. So towards the normal of the polygon and the inverse one. So I'm going to click on preview, and this is only shooting up. I'm going to click on modifier. Let's remove the color altogether. Just selecting this base and tip as white. Reduce the number of fibers and maybe reduce the length as well. And we can play with the thickness. We can play with the gravity. We can make the gravity noise a bit more obvious. We can add a little bit of segments. So right now there's 3 segments. So it's a little bit, I don't know, it's missing that sort of fluffiness to it. So I'm going to add some segments so that you can get more of it. And you can also add some coverage to add thickness to it. And of course, you can play it with the width profile. So the left-hand side is the base of that fiber, and the right-hand side is the tip. So I can push this like so and create something that starts thick, starts thick, and then it goes into a sharp fluff, something like this. Again, this might be a little bit too much, so I'm going to reduce my fibers. And I'm also going to reduce the gravity so that it's not affected by gravity as much. And that's it. We can clear them. Oops. Let's do it again, sorry. Once you're happy with this, we can go ahead and click on accept. And that's it. We now have 2 subtools. We have these fibers going through, and you can go ahead and continue the painting or the poly painting and achieve something that looks pretty realistic. Now, if you actually want to see how I created this specific texture, this is done in Painter. So I exported everything into Substance Painter, and I created this texture, or this fabric texture, based on a tutorial that I have on the channel. So I'm going to leave a link to this tutorial here so that you know how I created this texture. And if you want to texture your strap in Substance Painter, you can follow along and literally create the same sort of style of fabric that I create and that I have here in ZBrush. So hopefully this has been of help. Let me know if you like this technique or if you have some other suggestions on things that you want to see in this channel. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.